Ladies, are you self-conscious speaking in front of others? Do you sometimes wonder, is there a magic pill you can take to be successful at presenting? Do you wonder if there's a secret to really getting your message across, not only in the business world, corporate, but with friends and family? And what about those doggone emails? How come no one ever seems to understand what you're trying to get across? We're talking about this and many other topics today. This is Gail Davis. I am the founder of the Endless Mountains Empowerment Summit for Women. I'm coming to you virtually for 21 days with 21 Days of Empowerment. I am so blessed to have a team of competent communicators with me today. And I'll just give you an inside skinny. I met them all through an organization called Toastmasters International. So if you don't know what Toastmasters is, I'm putting a little plug, a little infomercial here. You better Google and find out. It is the key to success when it comes to communication. So I'm just going to open up and introduce our speakers today. And why don't we start with Carrie first? Carrie?
Hello, Gail, and thank you so much. I am Carrie. I am in upstate New York, and I'm an empowerment coach for women over 40, a public speaker, which I like to call a communicator, and an author. And my goal, my dream is to help women step into their big life, the life that's always been theirs. That's me.
Thank you, Carrie. And how about Dana? You introduced me to Carrie to begin with. So Dana, who are you?
Hi, I'm Dana Wolf, and I am down in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina now. And I did meet Carrie many, many years ago. She's got an amazing, beautiful voice and a way of delivering a message that sticks with you. And introduced Carrie to Gail through Toastmasters. Down here in South Carolina, I'm a financial manager and a financial coach. But I do remember those days of speaking in front of people in the very beginning and feeling my face flush and the butterflies. So I was really grateful to join Toastmasters and learn how to combat those communication fears that I had.
Thank you, Dana. And last but not least, Linda Lathrop. Linda, tell us about yourself.
Would love to tell you about myself, and I use for an elevator speech, which I always think is so important. I very often will say to people, my world is filled with possibilities. I help people become better thinkers, listeners, speakers, and leaders. And I do that by facilitating leadership programs, particularly for the Chemung County Chamber of Commerce. I do a series of workshops for a variety of other organizations, and I'm your go-to for Toastmasters in the Southern Tier. That's what I always say to people. So I enjoy thinking about what's possible and speaking about what's possible.
And Linda, I think that's why I love you so much, talking about possibilities. In fact, ladies, you guys are my inner circle. I really appreciate all of you. So today, table topics. Anyone who's involved with Toastmasters knows what table topics is. If someone's not involved with Toastmasters, well, basically it's where they throw a question at you. You have 2 minutes to speak on the topic. Well, if you know the trick of table topics, you can also digress and talk about any topic you want. But we are staying on communication today. So none of those tricks today, ladies. So the first thing I wanted to throw at you is when you're out there, how do you present yourself? What are some tricks with presenting, especially in light of how you're coming across? Go ahead, Carrie.
So one of the things that I have learned through being on stage, Dana mentioned that we met actually when I was singing a concert at her church. So I've been on stage for, I don't remember not being on stage from the earliest memory I have. And I can remember my dad saying, honey, when you're on stage, I don't care if you're singing or speaking, make sure you're smiling. Always smiling. People will connect with you. So when you are saying something, make sure that the expression on your face is something that people want, that draws them. So smile. And if it's something serious you're speaking about, still remain with complete eye contact and show empathy, but show the emotion on your face. And by all means, smile all the time. That's what he told me. It helps.
And that's a perfect segue into body language. I know, Dana, you're a body language expert. At least you've done workshops on it before, so I'm going to pick on you. Talk to us about body language.
I think that it's more important to, as Carrie was saying, the eye contact and connecting with people. How you deliver your message sometimes is more important than what you're actually saying. You want people to listen to you. You want them to hear what you have to say. And depending on your tone of voice, your facial expressions, whether you're fidgeting, and that goes with listening as well as talking, you want to be able to, focus 100% on who you're listening to when you're listening. But, distractions, people see what you're doing and they realize that you're not totally connected when you're distracted and you're going in a different direction, or you're looking around, or you're starting to fidget, you're writing notes instead of paying attention. So I do think that body language really does convey whether or not you're paying attention to somebody, and if you're getting your message across.
So not only if I'm in front of a group of people that I'm speaking with, but if I'm even in a group with 2 or 3 friends and I'm standing there and I'm fidgeting and I'm biting my nails or whatever weird habits I have. I remember one time that there was a minister that came to my church, and he actually stood there with his hands in the pocket, jingling his coins in his pocket. I wonder if that was all the money he had, so he had to jingle it to make him feel good. I don't know, but it was so distracting. Linda, talk to us about body language. What comes to mind when you think about it?
When I think about body language, I think about how tall we stand and how confident we can be by taking up some space. I know that men tend to take up more physical space than we do. And as women, we often have to fill the space just a little bit better. And we can do that with our body language. And secondly, I think it's a lot about our energy. What energy do we have, and how do we bring that energy to our speech? One of the first jobs I got, I didn't know a thing about doing the work. I was hired for some unknown reason, and years later, that supervisor told me she hired me simply by the speed at which I walked into the room. She knew I could do whatever she gave to me. And I think that's always think about in terms of what energy do I put forth.
That's a great point. So anybody want to talk about energy? Carrie, go for it.
I'll talk about energy all day long. I love it. When
I was waiting for you.
Yeah. I heard, the first time I heard Brendon Burchard speak, it's been years now, in California. He came out on that stage with so much energy.
Jumps.
He does, and he's back and forth, but it's very calculated. He doesn't just pace. It's very calculated where he stands, but it's all with energy. And so I started to study him and buy his courses, and really to find out, because I was so engaged. I was engaged immediately when he walked on stage. And he probably could have taught us that day about planting apples, and I would have been like, oh, he's the best, right? So I started to study him, and what he does is dance. And if his mom is there, with his mom, before he goes on stage, he literally will dance to get his energy up. And that's just something I have always remembered. And even if I'm going, like I was dancing before I logged on here, anytime I go live, I will dance for a few minutes just to get the energy up, because you're already smiling, you're already in the mood to be there. And it just, your energy is so contagious. If you don't bring energy to when you're speaking, if you don't bring the energy, you've already lost people from the second you step out on stage. Like Linda was saying, they hired her because of the way she walked in. That's energy, and it is everything. You can tell. It's my thing.
You know what? It's funny you're saying that, because right now we're living in a virtual world. Many of us are self-quarantined, and in a virtual world, we're on a lot of webinars and Zoom virtual meetings. I have been on my share where the speaker is just reading everything there is to read in front of the camera. I tune out. Forget it. I'm gone. Sayonara. Energy attracts. Energy engages. Energy has so much to do with an effective presentation. Thank you, Carrie. And I'm going to start to dance beforehand. Okay, let's move on now. So we talked a little bit about how we're presenting ourselves, our body language, and there's a plethora of materials out there on body language. Just Google it and you'll be surprised. Example, when you're standing, when you're talking with someone, you don't want to keep your arms crossed, you know that, and you want to be open and engaging. But there's so much out there and we could spend hours. But let's talk right now about content, the message we're trying to get across, whether it be in a group setting, whether it be for a meeting, whether it be for a school, a church, or just in a community. What are some tips with preparation? I know this is broad. You can go any direction you want. What are some tips on the message you want to get across? How do you prepare it? Go ahead, Linda.
Sure. I think one of the first things that I do is to try to think in my mind, what is that message that I want somebody to take away with when I'm done? Often when I'm facilitating a program, I will go around the room even at the end and saying, so share with us, what are you taking away? But I ask that question first. What do I want my audience to take away? And then I try to drill it down to some very simple language, not big words, but simple, clear language that everyone understands. And that way they're able to take that message away.
So clear and understandable. So to be clear and understandable, you better know your message yourself.
Better believe it.
Yes, yes. However, with my husband, many times he allows me to speak out loud and come to my own understanding of what I'm trying to get across. But you don't want to be in a group trying to figure out what you're even talking about. What about consistent or concise? Anybody want to talk about that?
I'll go for it.
Okay, go ahead. Table Topics 101. Go for it.
So I was thinking, like Linda had said, to use simple terminologies. You want to connect with your audience when you're speaking to them, because you don't want to speak over their heads with words that you're having trouble pronouncing, just to make yourself look good. So you really do want to know who your audience is, especially if you're speaking out in public. You want to be able to connect, as she said, knowing what it is that you want to say, and not being afraid to repeat it at the end of your message, because you really want to home in a specific point of your message. So starting and ending with the same simple sentence is wonderful.
And I liked what you said, you don't want to be above their heads or over them. I think of how many times would I go visit a new church and the pastor was so theologically diverse or astute or studied or articulate that he would be talking above here, and I just wanted to know the basic principles. How do I apply this? And knowing your audience, who is your audience? I think that's such a beautiful point. Let's talk about courteous. And if you notice, I have a lot of C's. I have clear, consistent, concise, courteous, considerate, correct. This is all going to be on a handout that our listeners or watchers, viewers will be able to download. But let's talk about courteous. There's a lot of stuff going on out there in Facebook land these days as you're trying to get your message across that's downright nasty. Anybody want to talk about being courteous in their message? Go for it, Dana. Go for it.
You know, I kind of remember my father saying, if it's not nice, don't say it. It's just a simple rule. If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. I do think that communication is probably the biggest part of any relationship, whether you're talking about a spouse or your children or friends or family or client or an audience. I mean, communication is so huge, and you really do need to be courteous as far as respecting the time allotment that you've been given to speak. respecting yourself and your values and what it is that you're presenting, the way that you're speaking, the words that you're using. There's a lot that can be said about that. I see Carrie shaking her head yes.
Carrie, did you want to add anything into that?
I love everything Dana said in it. And then I was thinking of a video I did last week on Instagram where I just got so tired of seeing people posting such judgmental things to each other. And this is a time that none of us have gone through anything like this. They say it's been over 100 years since there's been anything close, right? So none of us have experienced this. And we all are reacting in our own ways. And to be spreading judgment the way that Dana was saying, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say it at all. You can present your opinion without being judgmental of somebody else. You can come with love. And I think that being courteous is that you're getting your message across, but you're doing it with love instead of judgment. We don't need to be judging each other because you're different from me. We're all different. We're all going to have different reactions to what is going on, whether it's this or something else. We can come with love and keep that whole courteous going. Everything that Dana said is just, it so resonated with me. And I love the way that she brought it out. Loved
That's
it.
why you two are friends.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, Linda, did you want to talk about courteous and considerate in communication, whether it be in a group, to an audience, or even on social media?
Actually, I'd like to just mention, based on what Carrie and Dana said, something that I learned when I was raising two very rambunctious boys that challenged me in everything that I thought was right. And a friend of mine, an older friend, she said to me, just try this. When they challenge you, just say to them, you may be right. And I think those words are so valuable because it does go back to the love, but it's not saying you're wrong and I'm right. You may be right. And often that would open up channels of communication that we had not even thought about, because I acknowledged that they had a mind, they could think their own thoughts, and oftentimes as well, they would come back later and say, you know what, Mom, you were right all along. And so that phrase is worth a whole lot, just saying you may be right to start the conversation.
And that's a perfect segue, Linda, into content of your message should be correct. And I have to be honest, one of my pet peeves is when I go on social media and you see the poor missing kids or the different claims that are out there. I check, and I'm notorious for checking. And it really bugs me when a child has been reported missing and is being perpetrated out there on social media, and it's 5 years old and he or she was found. Or it really bugs me when I hear stories about Cadbury chocolates at Easter time and how it's contaminated with AIDS. Well, that was a false rumor that was perpetrated 10 years ago. So anything I'm sharing on Facebook, on social media, I vet it. But likewise, anything you're out there sharing, it should be vetted. Does anybody want to comment on that? I guess I'm speaking to the choir right now. Have you noticed that? Does that bother you, or is it just me out there that it bothers?
So Gail, I'd just like to say, so one of the worst things is to not take the time to vet something and to just say, oh man, that's a great message, I'm just going to hit that share button. And I think that's the best time in the world to don't hit the share button. Take the time, pause, think about it. Sometimes I'll even go back and say, was that really worthwhile, or is this going to cause a lot of controversy?
And it's okay to say to people, I'm not sure about this. Does anybody have any of the validation for this?
So I think pausing is big all the time. Just take a step back, think about it. And then
if you have a hesitancy in promoting it, don't.
Good thought.
So let's talk about interaction now, and listening is a big one. We're told we're given 2 ears and 1 mouth. Obviously, we have to listen more. Let's talk about listening and communication. What are your thoughts, ladies? How do we teach people to be listeners, but how do we become better listeners? Go ahead, Carrie.
It takes a lot of practice, and teaching someone to listen is, it's almost impossible to do until you have really dialed down and worked on it yourself, because listening is more than just hearing words. It is submerging yourself in the words that someone is speaking. It is not letting your brain go to your response while they're speaking. They may not even need a response. They may just need you to listen. They're not asking for your opinion. If they ask for your opinion, then give it. And that's hard. That's hard, because human nature is, when someone is speaking, to be already thinking of the response you're going to give them. And they don't care about your response. They just need someone to listen. So listening is an active, it is not passive at all. And man, it's hard. I'm still a work in process. Teaching someone else how to listen, that's they just have to want it. They have to want it that bad. You can't really teach it. They just have to want to do it. That's my opinion. Anyway.
Dana, did you want to add to that? I see a smile on your face there.
A phrase that I have heard repeatedly over the last year, and it really sticks with me, and Carrie alluded to it, is listen to understand, not to respond. And I've had it said to me, and I've had to say it to myself, because you're right. And I do think that as women, our natural tendency is to help people. We want to give them answers. We want to help them in whatever way. And so when you're speaking to someone, and the automatic response in our brain, like she was saying, is, well, how can I help them? How can I give them information? What can I do? You know, instead of just absorbing the words. And the listening part actually moves into the feeling, to understand what they're feeling at that point in time. And it may just be a hug that they need and not any words.
I actually had my son one day really chastise me, rebuke me. And he said, Mom, I called you up just to have you listen. I don't want advice. If I wanted advice, I would have asked you. I just want to vent. I just want to complain. I just need someone to shout this at. And I thought that was so interesting, that yes, we as women, we want to solve everything. We want to be the heroes, we want to be the saviors, we want to wash the butts and, you know, wipe what we want to do it all. But sometimes people just need to share it, and that's all they want, just to get it out there. Linda, did you want to talk anything about listening? No, you're good. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about authenticity. When we're trying to present, people can see through you and they know who you really are. And I talk at times about being transparent, being vulnerable. Who you see is what I am, and what I am is who you see. And I have no falsehoods here, that if you ask me, you know, if I bite my fingernails, I'll tell you, yes, I do. I'm authentic. I've worked hard at that, and I hope that I get that message across. Let's talk about authenticity in our messages. Who wants to go first?
I will take that one.
Okay, go for it.
Just thinking about, you know, being authentic. Oftentimes it is sharing a story, you know, that allows the audience to say, oh, they get upset about things too. They've had that experience. Who would have thought that? But I think that taking the time to think about a relatable story that can be shared helps one to become or be perceived as being authentic with. And we all have those stories. We have those stories. I didn't like to speak at all when I was in high school. And I had a teacher actually that said to me, it's not that you don't know the answer, it's just that you won't share the answer. And guess what? She was right.
Mm-hmm.
And she had to sort of almost confront me to say, oh, well, I do have some valuable things to share, so it's okay. I can authentically share my opinions. And I think it's a learned experience, a learned thing that we do too, to be not afraid that people are going to judge.
Mm.
We all like to judge, and that gives us that fear as well. But to simply think, I may have something of value that will help somebody else.
Mm. And speaking of authentic, sharing your stories, Dana, I was so impressed when you did the presentation on financial and you shared the story that you know what it means to live paycheck to paycheck. And you shared that story. Whereas I think people that are doing financial coaching, financial planning, advising, you think of them as being very perfect, that they've never had any financial struggles. But I really give you credit, Dana, that you shared that's where you were and this is what you learned and this is what you're offering now your client to your clients. Do you want to speak about authenticity, Dana, as you're out there presenting your message?
Well, I think that we definitely need to um, understand that the struggles that we go through, the trials that we have in our life are there for a reason. And I think that reason is so that down the road, we can help somebody else, maybe not have that same struggle, or maybe see that there's a brighter side on the other side of things. It can be tough. It can be stressful when you're dealing with a lot of things and you think that this is the worst that'll ever happen, and then you come out of it, regardless of what the situation is, and you come out of it and you realize that you've learned something along the way. And so being able to share that with other people, I think, is the reason that we go through a lot of these things. We certainly can get ourselves into trouble, but just I think that being willing to share and open yourself, it helps people to get to know you, and they trust you, because you really are willing to show them the secrets, the inside pieces, the scars that you might be having inside. And they, when you're speaking, people realize that this is a real person. This is a human who has gone through what I've gone through, or has struggled in the past and has made it through. And then they start to connect with you and want to know more, regardless whether it's financial coaching and getting out of debt, or any other struggle that you might be having, that if you can relate to them and are willing to say, yes, I have, and I've overcome it, and I can help you overcome it. I think that's a positive thing.
Mm. I think of the ladies that might be watching this video, and many of them might be entrepreneurs or in direct sales, out there trying to bring in a little side hustle for their family, a little side gig. And authenticity is so important. I think of the phrase that I learned years back: stories sell. Facts suppress, stories sell. And I want to know how this is relevant to you. I want to see how this has affected your life. I want to see you in it so that I know that it's valid. A used car salesman, or a car salesman who's trying to sell Subarus, if he's driving a different brand, a Toyota, I'm going to wonder what's wrong with that Subaru that he's trying to sell. How come he doesn't have a Subaru? I don't know that he just started to work there at the Subaru dealership that week and he hasn't had a chance to trade in his car. But authenticity. And I think that, again, segues to the next is building trust and giving value, who you are as you give value to others, as you build trust. And I know, Carrie, your coaching business is built on trust and value. Do you want to address that at all?
Sure, absolutely. So when I started to work in the coaching, I did a hard pivot from direct sales into coaching. And I needed to earn that trust of my clients before I could say to them, "Hey, I'm an empowerment coach." I had to earn their trust. I had to show them that I had walked through, like you were saying, I had walked through that valley. I had walked through that I know there's more in life for me. I just don't know what it is. And then coming upon it and stepping into my big life, putting my pow pow shoes on and stepping up there and doing it, they had to know that that's where I came from. And they had to hear that in order to trust me. And when that trust came, then they were ready to work with me. But the trust, if I had skipped that whole trust part of the steps, then my business would have crumbled immediately, because no one can really work with you on a deep level unless they trust you. So you can build a shaky business, or you can build a firm business. If you want something that is going to stand the test of time, you have to get that trust in order first. You have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anybody else have anything to share about interacting with your message? Otherwise, we'll move on to emails, because that's another way we interact. Anything we're forgetting here? We're good? Emails, the deadly sins, the do's and the don'ts. It's a way we communicate. It's the coward's way out many times. Dana, you brought it to my attention that so oftentimes people include too many people or not enough CCs and BCCs and everything else. You have been in the corporate world. Is this something you've seen?
Well, I think that it's one of my pet peeves is somebody that always has to have the last word.
Okay.
Really, like, you send out a message and then everybody's got to respond, and then you got 25 responses, and you really don't need 25. And, I think you just have to ask yourself, before I respond to this message, do I have something valuable to input? Or am I just repeating what somebody else already said? Because you know as well as I do, our email boxes fill up on a daily basis. I mean, every 10 minutes you can delete 10 emails. And so we don't have time to, go through the same responses. If it's important, say it, share it, if it hasn't already been said. But if you're the type of person that always has to have the last word, maybe not. Maybe you don't have to. Maybe you can let somebody else have that last word. And I do think it's important, that you are careful about who you're blind copying and why you're blind copying somebody, because are you doing it? Are you doing it for a legitimate reason, or are you doing it just so that you can push a little trouble towards somebody else? By blind copying. Maybe you're blind copying the boss or a supervisor or something like that, and you want to get that other person to snap back at you. So I think you really have to ask yourself why you're blind copying instead of just copying somebody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Carrie, you were nodding a lot there. Talk to me about emails. What have you seen in the way of people communicating via emails?
Yeah, so everything Dana said, she's always right on. And then also the number of emails you're sending. So a lot of us I don't know if you've ever been on an email list where every single day, multiple times a day, something is coming in and you just stop. There is a fine line between communicating by email and beating someone up by email. And you need to find that line. You can keep in touch with people through email and even email marketing. But if you overdo it, you've lost them and you've broken the trust, because they signed up for your emails because they wanted to stay in touch, not because they wanted you to beat them over the head. And you've lost them, and they will unsubscribe so fast to make your head spin. And I'm not sure if email marketing was exactly where we were headed on
that's
this,
fine.
But it's part of it, and
it's part of communicating.
So,
I signed up.
Yes.
I signed up for an ebook from someone yesterday, and then in the same day of receiving the ebook, I got 3 email campaigns from them. And I said, whoa, this is no. And I quickly unsubscribed. And one of the choices was too many emails. So I clicked that. Heck yes. Heck yes. Yeah. So whether it be sending emails just for the sake of sending it or email marketing, don't overdo it. Linda, how about yourself? You've communicated a lot by emails in your different roles and positions. What are some lessons we can learn?
Well,
do's and don'ts.
I actually want to share one of my pet peeves with an email. When I receive an email that has more than 2, possibly 3 questions or points, I get really frustrated if there's 10 more things. And the most important point is at the end. I just want the email to be right on with, here's what's important. This is what I need to know. What are you going to do about it? Please reply. I'm very, very precise in that way. I don't want to have to read volumes of words to get to the point.
And how many are reading emails on our smartphones?
Exactly.
If it's that long, forget it.
Exactly. And I certainly don't want the main point or the main question to be at the very end.
Mm-hmm.
I want it to be number 1, possibly number 2. And I don't want a whole lot of garbage after that. So I just think emails should be simple, they should be to the point, and they should have a real purpose. Otherwise, don't send them.
Okay, let's talk for a minute about emails. Are emails the cowardly way out? Should we pick up the phone or should we email? When do we do one or the other?
I was thinking, Gail, about when you said cowardly. I've been told that before you send a negative email, you might want to just wait on it 24 hours. And I think that's an important lesson that people should follow, an important rule that people should follow, because I do think that there are times when if you're frustrated about a situation and you just want to blast out there, and you know the language might not be appropriate, the topic may not be appropriate to email, and you send it out there and then you have to live with those repercussions instead of taking a moment. And if you're really upset with somebody, you know, picking up the phone like you just said and saying, hey, I need to clarify something with you. Can we chat? Can we talk? Can we communicate? And this is, you know, this is what I'm hearing, and you know, what is your side of this? So I do think that, you know, we need to make sure that before we send out those the nasty grams, that we take a moment to think about it, pray about it, and really decide if we should do it or not.
And Dana, what you just said, this is what I'm hearing. How oftentimes is emotion not displayed in an email, or wrong emotion, or you're reading it wrong? You're reading in between the lines, because the way that we perceive the world is the way that we're going to be perceiving this email. You put any cultural dynamics there, cross-cultural communications, and you have really screwed up.
And you could even take that one step further and say text messaging.
Okay, talk to me about text messaging.
Well, I mean, they're short little emails, and the fact that it's a written word. And if you're like me and you're not tech savvy, you know, you might get that message from a family member. Why are you yelling at me? Well, I'm not yelling at you. Well, your text message is all in caps, you know, so you have to know the rules of how to text as well.
I find it just easier if someone's texting me a whole bunch of questions. I find it easier to text them back, call me. Just call me. Let me explain it, instead of going back and forth and misinterpretations. And I've also heard with emails, which is just so sad, that many companies in this day and age will send an email to terminate an employee. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Google it. There's been a lot of major companies out there that sent the pink slip via email. Again, cowardly way. So we as women, we love to talk. So we need to learn how to communicate appropriately across all these lines of communication, whether it be email or whether it be just in person or Facebook. And that's a whole other presentation 21 Days of Virtual Empowerment is going to offer. So as we wrap it up, is there anything else you'd like to share with our viewers today? What's your one takeaway with communication? How can we be effective communicators, or more effective? What's one tip you want to leave the viewers with?
I'll go back to how you started off, Toastmasters. If you're struggling to communicate, if you feel the butterflies, if your face is aflame when you're talking, if you know that you're going to have to be presenting. I mean, Toastmasters is just an incredible group of people. It's international. You can find a Toastmasters group in the morning or in the evening and even on the weekends. And I know from, for myself, being a part of Toastmasters the last 5 years has really helped me to deliver a message that I'm comfortable delivering.
Excellent. Toastmasters.org. That's the place to go, and you can find a local club. Excellent. Thank you, Dana. Carrie, what tip would you like to leave our viewers with today?
This is a tip that I actually learned from studying Brendan Burchard's information. And he said that to become a better communicator, he just started speaking for 30 minutes a day. To his mirror, to no one, he would just pace and speak about any subject, whatever he was reading a book on or heard in the news, he would speak. And it made him an amazing communicator because he just practiced it every single day. And that has stuck with me. So I will pace and speak to the dog if I need to.
Thank you, Carrie. Linda, what's your one tip?
Wow, this is the hardest part of the questions, the one tip. Well, I think that it really goes back to being very clear, knowing what you want to say, then saying that clearly in just the right amount of words, not too many, not too few, but to speak and to write, to communicate, always keeping it as simple as possible to get the message across and get the work done.
Thank you. Thank you. And I have a tip, time constraints, to be very aware of how much time you have. And that's one of the things I learned with Toastmasters. If I'm doing a 5 to 7 minute talk, I stay 5 to 7 minutes. If I'm doing a 10 to 12, I stay 10 to 12. And in fact, speaking of time, it's time. It's time for us to depart now. But ladies, thank you so much. And you've been a blessing. And I hope that our viewers will see your enthusiasm, your passion, your commitment, and will learn something about communicating. So have a great day. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Gail.